Hey, it's Danny from Airfleet. I'm here to share a few interesting insights on how to build a B2B website at Airfleet.
Cool stuff. All right. Then let's start with process and planning. So when a client first comes to us for a new website, where do you usually start?
Wow, it's an interesting question. I think the most important part is, again, because different clients have different needs. Some clients come with a ready brand. Some clients come when they don't have anything and they just have an idea in their head that we need to create something new for them. So I think the most important part for me as a project manager is to understand the reasoning behind a new website, why the client is coming to us, what are their main points on their current site, and what are they trying to achieve with the new website.
Once you do have that, like what would be a type of questions that you would ask a client to understand their actual reasoning for creating a new website?
From my experience, I can say that the main issue and one of the main reasons why the clients are rebuilding their sites and why this idea comes to mind is definitely something on their current site doesn't work, whether the site is not aligned with their new messaging, or they're planning to change the marketing strategy, or they're trying to also go to a new market. For example, they're switching from B2B to be more B2C oriented, or whatever the case there is. So my main point here from a project manager perspective is understanding what exactly doesn't work for them. And sometimes clients might not know. They can just say something doesn't work for me, and then this is the main thing where we need to come into action and understand what exactly is off. Whether, as I mentioned, the site is slow and is hard to maintain, and it's very hard to manage the new pages, and for every little thing you need to go to a dev team, and it's very time consuming, and it's very hard to update things on the site. This is one thing. Another part, as I mentioned, the brand doesn't work, or the perspective changed, or some technical items don't work. Sometimes the forms or from the CRO perspective, the site is not perfect. Some clients have a lot of content on their site and they feel like no one reads it, or no one is going there, or again, there are various reasons. And I think the main idea here is to understand what exactly is off. And this gives us a direction, understanding what do we need to change, because as the end result, we want to deliver a site that works, that brings conversions, that is way better than something that they had before, and also that is easy to maintain, so they don't need to break their heads every time to change an H1 on the page.
So once you do have this information, now that you know what are the main challenges and what they don't like on the website, or what's not working on the website, or what do you do next? Like, how do you use all of this information to actually now create a better website?
We have different tools we have very cool surveys that we're sending to the clients where they can answer different questions, and it generally gives us an overview of where the business is at. It's not only about the sites, it asks different questions from the marketing perspective, about the buyer personas, about different references for the sites that they really like, and from there we build the next steps. And again, I think it's super important for us to get this right, because it kind of determines defines the process of what's going to come next. Because again, answering these questions, for example, if we're working on the brand, will help us understand what exactly in the current brand doesn't work and what are they aiming for. And this will help our design team later on to come up with a better brand that will speak to the client's needs, and that will improve the general look and feel of the site, and satisfied both the users and the client as well. This is when it comes to design. But from the development perspective, we can also, and from I think the most underestimated things that a lot of clients don't think about is the CRO and the actual structure of the pages and the content that they have on the current site. Because it's very hard for us as people to sort of let go of something that we had for a very long time. And when you're looking at the site all the time, it's hard for you as a marketing manager or VP of marketing to understand what exactly is not working from the content perspective. When we're doing the user, it's called the user journey survey, we're asking questions about the user journey, what exactly the client wants to achieve, and then we compare the site to the statements that they've mentioned in the questionnaire, and we understand where they don't match. And there we can give advice on the structure of, and a lot of clients have this issue of writing a lot of content, and they think that this is so interesting, everyone's going to be obsessed with reading about our tools, and they write a lot of like very long readers that no one's actually looking at when you look at Hotjar and different other tools. And we are here to help to make the content look inside the design and the new site, like for it to be concise and to actually bring conversion, to make sure that people are reading it because it's framed correctly on the site structure.
Okay, that's interesting. So if you had to break down their website process into the most like fundamental steps, like the most like the big milestones of creating a website, what do you need before you start? Like what are the big things that you need to make sure you have covered before you start? And then what are the milestones during the website project until you actually launch a website?
All right, so from what I'm seeing, the most important thing before we start any project is understanding what's ahead of us. When we have all the goals set correctly together with the client and making sure we are aligned on that. So as I mentioned, that together with the client, we define the marketing goal that the new website is going to serve, and this is where we start from. And when we are aligned on that, that's how we know that the site that we deliver to the client, he will be happy with. When it comes to the actual milestones, I think the most important part here, and it's usually underestimated, is the planning. And I believe if we plan everything right, things will go smooth. Again, you know that it can be sometimes a bumpy road because, again, it's not that easy to build a website. But I can definitely say that if we invest enough time in the planning of any project, this gives it it gives it a boost to be successful. And I think planning does not only come from our side, it's a shared responsibility of us and the client because we need to make sure that we have a visible plan of what's ahead of us, and we have exact milestones on what's about to happen and what both sides need to deliver, whether it's content, whether it's design, whether it's structure, or whatever. And also it gives the client a peace of mind, understanding and having a clear visibility of the project, what's going to happen next, and the client is not stressed out and they don't need to go to us and ask, hey, what's next? Am I late? Are we on time? So I think planning is definitely the biggest phase and the most important phase when it comes to a successful project. Then we're going into the wireframing phase. As I've mentioned earlier, we are building the structure of the site, making sure that we have no junk content and everything on the site is up to the point without bringing the creative into the vision. This helps the client see the site and the text written without the distractful design elements. And this can actually show the client, oh, you have too much text here, or you need to write a bit more text here, or you need more CTAs, or you need less CTAs, or the order is wrong. So the wireframing phase is definitely a super important step. Then, of course, the design and the branding, this is what the client mostly care about because this is like the visual part we as people care the most about. And I think this is usually a less tedious process if the wireframing phase is done correctly, because when we have real content or content that's close to being real on the site and we design the graphic elements and the structure based on that, then when the site comes to life in Figma, things come together. Because again, we're not just designing from the top of our head, we're designing based on real content and the structure that's well thought through and will bring conversions because it's built correctly and the site structure is right from the CRO perspective. And the fourth milestone here is development, which is usually the part that the client cares the least about because they're not really involved deeply in all of that, because it's all the stuff that happens behind the scenes with our wonderful customization team. Basically, we are creating the site from blocks using Airfleet platform, which gives the client in the later phase the opportunity to basically create any page as if from the Lego blocks in the upcoming future. So when you think of the landing pages or new, I don't know, blog posts, or even tweaking your existing product page by adding a new section, this all in the future, when the site is done, can be easily done just with a click of a few buttons. And again, this phase is usually the most boring for the client because all of the things are happening inside with our development team. But once it's done, we're going into QA phase where the client is super involved, because basically the client finally starts seeing the site in real life on their computer, and they can click all the buttons, they can check all the forms, they can see that actually the structure and the design that we've created a few months ago are starting to come to life, and they can see right away any pain points or things that might be off to them. And this is our playground here to fix those issues, if there are any, and make sure that the site turns out perfect after the QA phase. We're going into the pre-go live, and I think this is also the part not to miss, because again, if the client had the previous site when launching a new site, a lot of us as people, we don't really care about what we had before. We're super excited for the new brand, for the new site, for all the new URLs that we're going to launch, for all the new product pages that we've so beautifully built throughout this month. And we usually neglect all the pages that we had in the past. So in order for us not to create the SEO catastrophe, we're also making sure that we have all the redirects in place and all the technical items and the hosting and the security and everything GDPR related, everything that is in place, and we have everything sorted from the technical perspective. And then on the big day, we finally launch the site. And of course, we're doing all the post-go live checks as well. But on the go live phase, obviously, we have all the hands on deck from our side, making sure that this transition goes as smooth as possible, with no bugs, with no issues, with no downtime, and everything is working beautifully on production. So yeah, I think there's a lot happening from as you can see, but and I cannot say that there is any specific milestone that can be missed or is less important, because I'm a bit biased from a project management perspective, because I think every milestone is beautiful. Of course, I have my favorites, but I think if done right, every milestone, if every milestone is done correctly, then the end result is going to be beautiful. And of course, my goal from a project management perspective is to make sure that client is in the loop of all the changes wherever needed, and that it's a shared collaboration. So the client sees the site not only on the go live date, I'm making sure that it's a shared work where the client is seeing it on staging before, making sure that all the graphics are in place, that they're happy with the outcome, and so on and so forth.
So first of all, what is your favorite milestone?
My favorite milestone?
You mentioned you have your favorites.
Yeah, my favorite milestone is probably QA. As weird as it sounds, because it's usually the milestone that the dev team usually hate the most, but I love it the most because this is actually where you're seeing the site in action. You already can see the end of the light at the end of the tunnel. And this is for me as a project manager, because I'm also crazy control freak and have attention to detail, I can see all the bugs, all the spacings are being off. And also it is my favorite milestone because also the client can see the site and can see not the final but semi-final outcome. And when actually things start to come to life. I think this is why I love QA phase the most. I mean,
All
don't,
right.
it's the weirdest thing to say. I mean, again, probably people at Airfleet won't agree with me, but from my perspective, I think it again, because it gives you the sort of this understanding of this is what we've been working for so hard for the past few months, and this is the final or semi-final outcome where you can actually see the result of your actions on the screen of your laptop.
You mentioned a lot of milestones, like ballpark. How much time should a marketer expect when tackling this big project of creating a new website?
So depending from the how big the site is and what's ahead of us, what's the actual scope, the new website build can take from, it's definitely we're talking months here, so it can be from, let's say, 3 to easily 7 months, depending on again what we're doing, whether it's brand or no brand, logo, no logo. Just we have the starter pack for startups where we're doing just the bare minimum of important pages that any website needs, but without some crazy extra stuff. Yeah, and definitely if you are building a new site from scratch, it's much easier than building on top of the site and logo and brand that already exists, because there is a lot of planning and redirects to happen and all the technical review to happen, making sure all the workflows are working correctly. So yeah, it's definitely not, unfortunately, for sure, for people who, when the clients come to us, they always think, oh, it's going to take us a month or two, maybe, I don't know, few weeks, but it's definitely not the case. So it's a long but definitely a rewarding process, because we want to do things right. We're not here to drag the process into it being a year or 2 years old process, but we definitely want to do things right. And you've heard the amount of milestones and the amount of things we need to do. Yeah, and in order to do it right, we need time. But also, I wanted to note that because we're building sites using Airfleet platform, I can definitely say before that I worked with us not doing it with the Airfleet platform, and when the Airfleet platform started to come into life, things started to be much faster when we're building the site on the Airfleet platform. Why? Because we're constantly working on the new plugins and optimizing items, and I can see that the speed of delivery from the development perspective improved a lot. So, for example, before that, when every time we would build a resources hub, it would take us, let's say, a week of development, even more. And now we can do it in a few days, just because we are constantly optimizing the plugins. We're working on some new functionality and tools, and we're trying to automate items as much as possible. And I can definitely see that with Airfleet platform being in place, things changed a lot from the timeline perspective, because we can do things much faster than in the past.
All right. From a client perspective, like from a marketer perspective, what can I do in order to shorten the timeline or the time it takes to create a new website?
From my experience, the biggest pain point is content and final approvals. Because let's be honest, in the majority of cases, there's not one stakeholder who needs to approve things. And usually these rounds of approvals and the back and forth take forever internally, because again, people have agendas and it's sometimes really hard to get a final yes from your CEO. So definitely the feedback phases usually take the longest when it comes to client collaboration, and also final approval of the content and content creation for all the pages. It's definitely the phase when the client comes, from my experience, when the client comes with the ready content, with knowing or even have like a content writer or people in their team who are working on it for, let's say, new pages, for new product pages or new case studies or whatever. When we have the written final content in place, things are, I wouldn't say flying, but they're much faster in the design phase, in the wireframing phase, in the development phase, because usually this is the biggest blocker when it comes to making sure that the site goes live on time. from the client perspective. So round of approvals and content work.
Okay, that makes sense. And in terms of like, let's talk about pitfalls. What should I, as a marketer, let's say I'm not working with Airfleet, what should I avoid, or what should I know or plan ahead in order to avoid pitfalls that will cause me to either be very late with the website project or just have a bad website?
One of the major pitfalls to avoid is making sure your marketing stack will work exactly the same way it works on the old site when you're migrating to the new site. Because in a lot of cases, let's say your old site was built on Webflow and you're migrating to HubSpot, you need to make sure that all these workflows are also migrated to HubSpot or to the new CRM that you're about to be using, to make sure that nothing falls between the cracks. It's super important to think of that, and of course to make sure that all the tracking and the analytics and the GTM and everything related to the technical stack of the site is in place on the new site as well. Because again, once you launch the site, you would care about whether your conversions dropped or you increased your conversions, whether how the traffic is going on the site, and all of these things. So this is super important that from the technical perspective, your site is functioning correctly. And I think it's important. It's important for me to note from Airfleet perspective. It's a part of the go live procedure to make sure that the analytics code is like that, everything from the analytics perspective is in place, the GTM is working correctly, and we're testing it, and the site is connected to Google Search Console. But in a lot of cases, there are additional tools that the client might have used in the past that weren't taken into consideration on the site because the client haven't thought of that, or they weren't abandoned for a very long time. So it's super important for us to know about all these things, and for marketers to think about all these things when they're moving to the new site, whether it's Hotjar, whether it's Trend Demon, whatever the client, whether there are different chatbots or tools that you're using. Just make sure that things that you need on the new site are also migrated there, because it's not automatic.
Which stakeholders should be involved from both the client perspective and an agency perspective when it comes to creating a new website?
There's definitely a list of stakeholders that need to be involved in various phases of the process. I'm not saying that your CEO needs to to waste their time on every little thing on the site, but definitely when it comes to major decisions like the brand or the logo or the homepage and product structure, we need a final yes from your CEO. When it comes to career pages, we need to make sure that HR team is also collaborating with us, understanding what are their needs, what's the flow for, what's the career tool management tool that they're using, all of that stuff. When it comes to product, we definitely want the product team to be involved as well, because if you're, especially it's super important when you're changing the brand and the brand colors, because your product team needs to change these colors on their side as well, and we need to make sure we get a final yes from the product team as well on the product pages. So there are a lot of people who needs to be involved, but I think it's super important to keep it precise, so we have relevant stakeholders and the relevant milestones approving the relevant things, and we don't keep CCing everyone to one email so that the CEO approves the blog inner, which usually people care less about when it comes to big structure and big items, because it's the general structure that it's hard to break or hard to go wrong about.